Hello, everyone, and welcome to Main Deck Monday. I'm your host, Josh Sampson, with your weekly channel for anything from memes to meta. This week, we are going to be discussing Big Priest. We're going to go over the deck list, some tech cards, some matchups, and how viable it's going to be in THL. That being said, we are going to look at these cards right here, and we're going to start off with some of the important cards that are in this deck. What makes this deck tick? What is this deck trying to do? So the first card we're going to go over is Barnes. Barnes has been out for a while. It's a 4-mana 3/4 that will summon a random 1/1 copy minion from your deck. Whatever size the minion is, it'll come down, it'll be a 1/1, it'll be on the field, and you'll get whatever end of battle or end of turn triggers you might happen to get, or any death rattles is usually the main use for Barnes. That being said, we really want more than one copy of cards that can pull these big giant things out of our deck. So we also run 2 Shadow Essence. It's 6 mana, a little bit more expensive, but instead of getting a 1/1 copy, you get a 5/5. The only downside of Shadow Essence is you do run Barnes, so sometimes if you don't draw Barnes and you play this on 6, you will get a 5/5 Barnes, which doesn't do anything. Little bit infuriating when it happens, but more often than not, you're hitting a big fatty and getting some really good abilities with this. Now, you might be asking, what is it that we are trying to hit with our Shadow Essence and our Barnes? The main target is going to be Obsidian Statue. 9 mana, 4/8, Taunt, Lifesteal, and Death Rattle blows up one of your opponent's random minions. This card is so good. Aggro decks can't beat it against the control decks that are just playing big giant things. They have to have multiple things, and a lot of times it comes down to them trying to flip coins, 50-50 chances to blow up their big thing or the little tiny thing they just played to hopefully you hit it. This card is so good. That being said, we have a couple other big targets. Lich King. Lich King is a 8 mana 8/8 taunt, and it gives you a random Death Knight. Now there's a lot of different Death Knight cards. You have board sweeps, you have weapons, you have target removal, you have heal, you have remove the top 5 cards of your deck and put all big minions that you see there into play. This card is so good, and it's a giant taunt, so they have to get through it. The aggressive decks have a hard time doing that, and it gives you so much card advantage against the control decks. Just like Lich King, we have Ysera. Ysera is very similar, has a bunch of different cards you can get that have a lot of different effects that are very good in different scenarios. Ysera has a big body though, it's a 4/12, it's really hard to kill, and against opposing priest decks, it's really hard for them to find a removal spell for it, because they can't Shadow Word Paint it or Shadow Word Death it. But it's been around forever, great card. Now, the main thing you want to hit whenever you're using those cards is actually Yashiraj. Yashiraj, 10 mana, 10/10, and at the end of your turn, you get to put a copy of a minion with normal stats into play. Now, when you do Yashiraj, it will actually remove that minion from your deck, just like Recruit, while Barnes and Shadow Essence do not. They give you a copy, Yashiraj actually pulls the full card out, so you can't draw that card anymore. But if you play Barnes on 4, you get a 1/1 copy of Yashiraj, which pulls out a 9 mana, 4/8, Obsidian Statue. It is so hard to lose. Very good. Now, you might be thinking, well, if I only get a 1/1 copy of that, why is that good? What can I do with that? Well, we have a couple of recursion cards. Things like Eternal Servitude, which is 4 mana and lets you bring a minion that's died this turn back into play with its normal base stats. So if you Barnes into a 1/1 Lich King, for example, they kill your Lich King. Well, now for 4 mana, you get an 8/8 Lich King, and you can do that twice every game. We also have the new Spellstones in Priest. Starting out, it's 7 mana, and it will bring back 2 different friendly minions. Now, when we see different, they can't be like you have 2 Obsidian Statues who died, so you can pull out 2 Obsidian Statues. They have to be 2 cards with different names completely. It's very important. Sometimes you just hit a bunch of Obsidian Statues throughout the course of the game, and when you Spellstone, you only have 1 target still, because you've only had Obsidian Statues die. Keep in mind, they have to be completely different names. If they don't have a different name, you're not getting it back. But you can upgrade this to where it can bring back up to 4 total minions, and with how many spells we have in the deck, it is really easy to upgrade this card. The last card I want to highlight is one of the newer cards out of Kobold, Psychic Scream. It is a new Wrath or board clear that Priest gets. It's 7 mana, and it shuffles all minions into your opponent's deck. This card is really good. There's a lot of death rattle effects, things like Void Lord, or when Void Lord does die and it has a bunch of 1/3s on the battlefield, shuffling all those 1/3s, giving your opponent some really bad draws. I've also Psychic Screamed against Raza Priest, putting in cards like Obsidian Statue back into their deck that they might also have, and makes it to where sometimes they just can't play their Raza or their Kazakus because they have duplicates in their deck because you shuffled them in there. So this card has a lot of versatility. It's really, really good, and it gets around a lot of the death rattle effects, which is awesome. So that being said, we want to look at the last couple cards in the deck here, and we're going to just highlight over them for us real quick. So we have Pint-Sized Potion. That, in combination with your Shadow Word Pains and your Shadow Word Horrors, can let you remove almost anything. It's really hard for you not to be able to kill something if you have a Pint-Sized and one of the other two cards in your hand. Shadow Visions just gives you duplicate cards. It lets you hit a third and fourth, either Eternal Servitude or a Psychic Scream or the Spellstones. It's just very versatile. It lets you just find extra copies of cards you need in whatever matchup you're playing. Spirit Lash is a card that is really, really good against the Paladin decks that are out there right now. Paladin has a lot of one power and one toughness creatures that Spirit Lash not only does it heal you, but it will also usually clear their board unless they have a bunch of Divine Shields. Shadow Word Death, just solid removal spell, kills a lot of the big things like Quarter Creepers in this meta. We talked about Barnes, we talked about Eternal Servitude, Greater Healing Potion. There's a lot of aggressive decks. Healing 12 for 4 mana is really good and can pull you right back into this game. Dragonfire Potion. Again, we don't really run any dragons. The only dragon we have is Ysera, but we're just trying to get to that late game. If you don't draw Barnes, you're really just trying to get to that 7, 8, 9 mana to where you can play these big threats that are hard for them to deal with, and that card lets you do that. The last card that we haven't talked about is Shadow Reaper Anduin. Usually this is played in the Raza decks that you can combo with them, but because we're not running it Raza and we're not comboing, you're really using it as a removal spell to kill a bunch of big creatures, as well as it lets you push some extra damage. Just slowly over time, hit you for 2, Pint Size, hit you for 2, Shadow Word Horror is just really good, and it lets you get some nice clears and just lets you start pushing damage really effectively. That being said, that is our main deck. One of the last things we are going to do is we're going to talk about some tech cards that you can board in your THL matches, or even on ladder, depending on what you're seeing a lot of, to try to overcome the hurdles that this deck sometimes has and adjust some matchups. So that being said, the first thing we're going to look at is Mass Dispel. Mass Dispel is a 4 mana card that you can silence all of your enemy minions and you draw a card. So one, it cycles. In the matchups that it's bad in, you just get to run it out for 4 mana and you just get to draw a card and draw into something different. Against the decks that it's good against, things like a bunch of Void Lords, where they pop out a Void Lord, they cube, they hit it, you have the million taunts in your way, but you have lethal with the power of your creatures because you have Yashras or something out. You can silence all their minions and just hit them. That being said, the next card we're going to look at is Holy Smite. Holy Smite, it's good against the aggressive decks, just 1 mana, deal 2 damage, nice and easy. Not a lot to talk about it here, outside of just, if you're facing a lot of aggressive decks, it's just another card that you can bring in, remove some of the higher end cost cards to just have a little bit more tempo. That being said, that's all the tech cards I have for you. I've seen some people sometimes run a second Greater Healing Potion. It's all just kind of up to you on exactly how you want to build your list. The last thing we're going to touch on is matchups. Why do you bring this deck? This deck has a great matchup against Druid and Warlock. If you're playing against either of those two classes in THL, this is a deck to bring. It is really hard to lose those matchups with this pile of cards. The things that it loses to are the aggressive decks. Things like Paladin and Rogue. They just go underneath you by the time you start getting to your 7, 8, 9 mana cards. They've already won the game. You can sometimes just steal wins, though, from them still. Sometimes if you just play Barnes on 4, you even coin it on turn 3, and you get an Obsidian statue, and you start bringing it back with Eternal Servitudes, it is impossible to lose, and that is all we have. That being said, that is your Main Deck Monday. This will be coming in every Monday, different decks. Thank you all.